Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for the up. Let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for you know who. Wanna go, gonna glow.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of OPE. I am Iowa Joe, and this is a continuation of our off-season off-topic episodes. I have brought on two good friends to talk about one of my favorite subjects outside of the Packers, and that is Star Wars. Gentlemen, today I guess I should introduce my guests, Dan Kotnik and James Townsend. I can't talk. I just came off a 12-hour shift. I got home at 5 o'clock this morning, so I am running on caffeine and willpower right now. But, gentlemen, what's happening today?
Man, I'm dealing with the toddler/newborn life in the middle of a heat wave here in Detroit. So, I don't know, 12-hour shift, wake up at 4 a.m. and wait for the library to open so my kid can go do something in the air conditioning for an hour.
Yeah, well, I have 4 kids, one of which is a toddler, so I feel that
man,
for sure.
Respect, mad respect.
And the only thing I got to deal with is my big-bellied beagle, so I'm good here. But today is Star Wars Day. I've looked forward to this for a long time. Dan and I, we've had conversations in the past on it. James, since you're new to the group, we haven't really had a big conversation, but we did touch on it when you joined me for our episode earlier in the off season. But the first question I'm going to put out there, and James, I'm going to let you take it first since you're the newbie of the group. What got you into Star Wars?
Oh, man, I remember, I was born in 1981, so I remember being about 2 or 3, around there. I mean, it was ingrained in me as I grew up, and, I remember me and my cousin, would always just, stay the night at my grandma's house, and we would have A New Hope on VHS and just watch it over and over. It's always playing, and then all the other ones too. And you just grew up, and especially, Lucas was a mastermind, and I was one of the kids roped in by the merchandise. And man, to go scouting for Star Wars toys, I remember that. It's like they made the exact number to perfectly match supply and demand. So you could never find a Luke Skywalker. You could never find all these things, and then they quit making them, and on into like the later 80s and the early 90s, and I would go to antique malls and look for them and stuff, and try to find people's old toys in their attics. So I mean, yeah, I was just caught up in the magic from day one.
That's great. Yeah, I feel that. Dan, how about you? What got you into the Wars of Stars?
Yeah, I am definitely, I'm a little bit younger, I think, than both of you guys. I was born like I'm on the edge of like 1990, 1991. So like when I was a kid, like I distinctly, I can remember like watching glimpses, like bits and pieces of like because like my family wasn't like a Blockbuster family. Like we didn't go like, rent big movies from Blockbuster, but like I would catch like huge chunks of these like pop culture movies on TV. So like Ghostbusters, Raiders, Star Wars on like TV when they were on. And so I would catch like these huge pieces of it. I'm like, and so I'd grow up like thinking like, man, like these are like really cool. These are really cool. And then like, as if it was like perfectly synced up just for my generation. I mean, basically it probably was like Phantom Menace came out, right when I was at peak, that age of grab on for a fandom. I was like a kid remembering, like, I remember seeing like this is going to be so stupid. I remember seeing the Taco Bell dog in a Phantom Menace commercial. And I was like, this is going to be so awesome. I probably hadn't seen like the first 3 Star Wars movies like all the way through, and like known like the whole story. I knew like the main points, like Luke blows up the Death Star, Vader is his father, you know, he comes back and kills the Emperor, like bam, like the main plot points. And so I was like, this is like a Star Wars movie for me. I get to go see it. And like I just remember loving all three of those movies. And it wasn't until like a few years after the after Revenge of the Sith came out, and you got like a little bit older, and like that was like what, 2005, I think.
Yep.
So that was like right when I was getting into high school, and that's right when like Facebook and social media started to come around, and I was like, that's when I started realizing like, oh, like people kind of hate these. I'm like, and that's when I kind of like started to like get into like I it's weird that like that's when I started to like get into like the community aspect of Star Wars and start to analyze like Star Wars more than just like a movie, and seeing it as like an experience and seeing it as like the story and the lore of it all, you know?
Yeah, I feel you. See, I'm kind of in between you guys in age. I was born in '86, so I didn't get to catch the original run of anything. But I remember I was in kindergarten, and this always stuck in my mind. I had a kid in my class whose name was Luke. Well, we ended up getting a student teacher who would come in and call, and he just started calling him Luke Skywalker, and we're all like, "What the hell are you talking about?" You know, just we're all little kids, we don't know it anyway. And then, uh, I don't know, a few years later, a kid moved into town, and he kind of was into it, so that got me into watching it. And my parents bought me the VHS set, of the original three, which I still have at home, and that got me into it. And then what really got me into it was when George Lucas re-released them into theaters, his special edition ones. And my mom took me to the first one, and then it really sticks my mind a lot because then my mom got diagnosed with cancer. So while she was doing that, the three movies were getting released, and while she was feeling good, that was our way to go to the theater, and she took me to see all three of them into the theater. And don't worry, it's not a sad story. She's still alive and kicking and a pain in my ass. So it was just at the time it was a situation where you didn't know what was going to happen and all that. So she just wanted to take us, here and there. And then so that got me into it. And then when I never got to see the prequels in theaters because I was in that awkward time where I was just, I think the first one came out in 2001, so I was like a sophomore in high school. And then, so on. So I was in high school, I was doing stuff in high school. I wasn't able to go to the movie theaters as much, so it was just one of those things I didn't get to do. But then when I hit college and had downtime between the drinking and the classes and all that other stuff, I was able to sit down and watch the movies. And Dan, I've told you this story before that a buddy of mine bought Revenge of the Sith the day it came out, watched it, gave it to me and said, "You've got to watch this." And I sit there and I missed a class because I had to watch it twice. So that really got me into it. And then another reason with the downtime, I got into the books. So it got me into the expanded universe. I've read all the books, the video games. I've played a lot of the video games. So it just sucked me in, the culture and all that. And I know it's a fictional universe and all that, but I take my Star Wars very seriously, and I don't like people messing with it. So we'll get into that part of the conversation later on.
What's the difference between DIY and doing it yourself? It's the difference between a part-time passion and a full-time business. Wix gives you the power to turn your passion into a moneymaker. With a website that fits your unique vision, let your ideas flow with AI that guides you, but keeps you in the driver's seat. Manage your business from one dashboard and keep it growing with built-in marketing features. It's time to turn your daydream into your dream job. Go to Wix.com.
So with all that kind of leads into a little bit with all the media that is out there now for Star Wars, between the video games, the book series, the TV shows, the movies. What is what has been your favorite parts of it so far? And whoever wants to take it first can take it first. But what have been your favorite parts of the Star Wars universe so far?
I mean, is it is it too early to say that Andor was like one of the best things? I absolutely loved everything about both seasons of Andor. I thought everything they did with it was really well done. I think the way that they not only just immersed you in the universe itself with the way that it was shot, and it was just clear that this was not the sequel people that were trying to kind of, you know, flash bang, throw a bunch of crap at you, like bang bang bang, shoot laser gun, bullet gun, kind of thing. And like, this is Star Wars, right? Like, everything is quick, flashy. Like, it was like, no, like, Star Wars is just, you want to be in the universe, and we're going to pull you into this world. And they did it so well. And the best part about it was that it wasn't even like Star Wars people. Like, Tony Gilroy is like famously not even like a huge Star Wars fan, and he was able to pull us, anybody, a Star Wars fan, non-Star Wars fan, into the Star Wars universe so well, and tell this story in the universe that, yeah, it was so well done that it was like, has nothing to do really with like the I mean, it obviously has something to do with a lot of the whole overall story, but like, it's so separated from like the Skywalker saga itself. The fact that it works so well, I think, like, really puts it on another tier. So Andor for me is like god level Star Wars.
James, what about you? What's been so far with all the stuff that's out there been your favorite part of Star Wars?
Well, to speak to some of Dan's points real quick, I think he touched on something that I think is going to be important for the Star Wars universe going forward, and that's, let's see some stuff outside of the Skywalker story. It's an immensely huge universe. Let's see if we can keep the magic going and kind of get away from that. But I'm a huge fan of Andor too. But I think that when you ask what my favorite or most important part is, I would have to say that that would be the most magical for me. And the most magical phase of Star Wars for me was uh, before the prequels came out, and when you had the original trilogy and the expanded universe books, and there was so little to go on that the magic was in the fact that you had to use your imagination to fill in all the blanks, and there were a ton of blanks. So, like, you would hear, gosh, one snippet of dialogue about the Clone Wars, and you had hours upon hours just to think, what were the Clone Wars, and just to do that. And then, like, I'm pretty sure the Heir to the Empire trilogy came out before the prequels,
Yep.
but things like that, they expanded on that Clone Wars idea, and like the Dark Empire comics from Dark Horse. It just it further fleshed out that mythology, but still left enough room to let you and your imagination run crazy. And then when the prequels came out, it kind of filled in a few blanks. But then, as Disney gets a hold of it, they're
A few
filling
too many blanks.
Disney get a hold of it, and yeah, I love Andor. They've done a lot of cool stuff that have really enjoyed, but they are filling in all the blanks, and it's like they're leaving nothing to the imagination. And to me, that was the most magical part of Star Wars, was to all you could sit around and daydream about, and like that's going away.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I hated about when Disney bought the rights to Star Wars and Lucasfilm, was all that stuff that they did. They just said, nope, we don't want it anymore. It's null and void.
Yeah,
And it was like,
yeah,
man, there's so many great stories that you could use. And luckily, like, John Favreau and Dave Filoni have been reaching into it and say, all right, we're gonna pull this out of there, we're gonna pull that out of there. We're not gonna completely erase everything, but there's just so many great stories that were in the expanded universe. And I agree, James. I always tell people, and one of these days I'm going to take a picture of it, but I have shelves over here that have the whole expanded universe novel set from beginning to end. Hundreds of dollars were spent on it, time searching for the damn books and all that, and I've read them all. I loved them all, and there's just so many great stories, and there's some weaker stories, and there's some ones that's like, nah, that I'm glad they got rid of that one, or they got rid of that set or
Yeah.
whatever. But there's other ones in there that really, really were great, and I would have loved to see them incorporate a lot of that into what they're doing now. But I understand it from Disney's point that they wanted to make their own stories and make their own universes and stuff like that. So now this is going to be the flip side of it. What's been your and before I do that, I have still yet to see all of Andor. I tried to get through the first season, and I struggled with it. I don't know what it was that I struggled with. I had a hard time connecting with it. And so obviously, since I didn't finish the first season, I haven't touched the second season. So I don't know. It's really weird because I did like Rogue One. So it's really weird that I can't get into Andor as much. But maybe I'll have to sit down here pretty quick and try
Did
to.
did you at least get to the Narkina 5 like arc where he goes to prison in this first season?
The last episode that I watched, they had just like escaped from prison.
Okay. Okay. Cuz
So
that
I
that's
mean,
that's when it hooked me.
okay, yeah, I got to that point, and it was, I mean, having Andy Serkis yeah, however you pronounce his last name, was
Yeah.
great and all that. I just, like I said, for some reason, I was having a hard time connecting with Andor's storyline, and it was just, I don't know what it is, but I wasn't able to connect with it like I was other things. So now this is going to come up with my other question. What's been your least favorite thing about all the stuff in Star Wars at the moment? Since Dan took it first last time, James, how about you take this one this time?
Uh, I
We
know
might
this.
all agree on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I know this is a hot button topic, but my least favorite and the experiential side of it was Last Jedi. And
Yeah.
and there are some parts I appreciate about it, but uh it's kind of there's a lot of back ideas behind this. And the first I remember seeing the prequels at the theaters. I would stand in the line. The magic was still there, everybody's dressed up, long lines. And I had issues with the prequels, and a lot of that just boils down to you see a lot of people object about the prequels, and the response. I think even George Lucas's response was, "I'm sorry you got disappointed by a kids movie." Like, and yeah, you got to remember that's his audience, and yes, I can let a lot in the prequels slide. My problem with the prequels was it it was almost I felt like it was written by someone who didn't know the original story. Like, but I was like, I know George Lucas wrote this, but when Obi-Wan says, "I knew your father and he was already a good pilot when I met him," I don't think anyone who heard that would have thought, "Oh, maybe he was just like a 7-year-old boy who was a pod racer." Like it was like, Lucas, you remember your own story, right? And like that kind of thing. I just those were my issues, but I can get past them. I never felt any disappointment watching a Star Wars movie, even with the prequels and even Force Awakens. Yeah, it was A New Hope redone, but I was still like that. I saw it like 2 or 3 times in the theaters because it was just that Star Wars world back on the big screen, and I was happy to see it and excited. But I remember when I saw Last Jedi, I felt this weird feeling when I saw Leia, Mary Poppinsing through the space, and just there were things I was like, what is this weird feeling? And then it ended, and I walked out in the theater, and me and my wife are walking to the car, and I'm like, I don't know what's wrong right now. And it took me about a day or two to realize I'm feeling disappointment, a feeling I've never felt with Star Wars. I couldn't identify it. I'd never linked those two things together, disappointment and Star Wars, and I didn't know how to handle it. But the issues are, I surprisingly wasn't that disappointed with Luke Skywalker's arc. My main issue was the whole movie was essentially a car chase in space. They built up Finn and Poe and those guys as their story arc went nowhere. They basically made them war criminals responsible for killing thousands of people because they disobeyed orders and did what they wanted. And then it didn't even work in the end. So Poe and Finn are like murderers of thousands of rebels. And it's just like a giant spaceship chase in slow motion. I was like, this is terrible. And then that brought the larger issue of the sequels to bear for me, is that I like when someone tells a story that they know how it's going to end. And to take such a huge franchise and say, okay, I'm going to tell episode, shoot, 7 or whatever, and then just let you take it. And I don't know where it's going to go. And it's like, you guys, so Ryan Johnson just kills off the main villain and wraps a ton of stuff up in a way that, like, you're going to need another 2 or 3 movies now. And
Yeah.
it was a wreck. It was a wreck. So that was that's my least favorite, because that started my dissatisfaction with some of the Star Wars stuff going on.
Dan, he sounds just like me, doesn't he? Because that was the exact same wording that I used when Dan did a show where they did a rewatch of the Star Wars movies, and I was on the Last Jedi one, and the whole Leia doing the Mary Poppins is word for word what I said on that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
And the novel explains that. The novel, I read the novel of the novelization, and in
yeah.
it, she learns how to do this trick from Luke where she can suspend her body, and like they explain it. And I'm like, if they had done that in the movie, it would have made more sense. But she just randomly is like out dead in space and is like, just saunters back into the spaceship, and it came from nowhere. And I'm like, what in the world?
Because it's even like a bigger fu to the audience, because everyone knows Carrie Fisher dies.
Yeah.
Like she's dead, and you think, okay, this is how they're like, okay, it's a little unceremonious, but like this is how they're gonna take care of it. And you're like, okay, like there she is, like there's our princess, and then it's eyes open, you can fly, you can fly.
It's awkward. It took me out of the experience. When you see a
Yeah.
Star Wars movie, you're soaking up every minute. And when that happened, I thought, what am I watching? And it created this further layer of detachment, and I ruined everything for me.
All right, Dan. I imagine your sentiments are going to be pretty similar to that one. So, what has been your least so far of the?
I've got 3 words for you. Somehow Palpatine returned. Yeah, I had an interesting experience with this movie because like I said, my birthday is at the very end of the year, December 30th. And that movie came out in 2019, like near Christmas time. And my whole family was together. We were together in Columbus, Ohio for a wedding, like around the same time at Christmas, or it was for New Year's. And so we were there a couple days early. I'm like, well, it's my guys, because it's my birthday. I want to just do like the movie theater experience where you go and like you order like a real, like the dinner in the big comfy chair. I'm going to go see the last, this is the last Skywalker Star Wars movie. Like everyone, I know not everyone's a Star Wars fan. Like just come with me. Let's go see this movie, like, and do it. And everyone's like, okay, Dan, like, yeah, let's go do it. So we go see this movie, and kind of the same thing with James, kind of like sitting there. And I was more like, kind of coming to grips with the fact that it was the last movie, like you're just kind of like, that was it. There's no do-overs after. You're not expecting any do-overs after this. Fast forward like 4 or 5 months after that, we're in the thick of COVID. And I remember sitting in this house that we were kind of like cloistering in for a month or two at the very beginning, the worst part of like COVID. And it's a northern Michigan winter, so it's like bleak. It's like you're on Hoth. Like it's this terrible winter out. And I just remember looking out the window, and this stray thought came through my mind. I'm like, the last movie I ever see in a movie theater may have been the Rise of Skywalker, and it was the most depressing thought I'd had since the start of COVID. Just like kind of like Joe, like kind of what you said, like it was like the epitome of just the biggest problem with the sequel trilogy was there's no continuity in the story. One person wants to tell this story, then it's this person telling this story, then it's the next person telling this story. And I felt like the Rise of Skywalker one was just there was no what was the can anyone tell me what the like final thing was? Like outside of like it was like you had to invent Palpatine out of nowhere because you didn't have anything.
Yeah.
You got like you said, James, like you got rid of your big bad in the previous one, so you had to invent this whole other thing out of literal thin air, and and so it's not earned. And then half of the set pieces when they go to I forget the name of the planet where they're having the 100-year celebration, and they and then all of a sudden Lando is just there out of nowhere, and then there's the whole thing about like they're trying to create tension between Poe and Finn because like you were a space runner, okay, like oh Poe runner of space, like and it's like none of this seems earned. Like it all felt like the whole movie felt like a bad improv movie, and I'm like it just like this was the signature. This was the final line in the story of the Skywalker saga.
Yeah.
And you did it in crayon, like with backwards letters and stuff like that. And like, wow. Like I literally like a couple weeks ago, I tried to, they had for a while there on Disney Plus, they had like the stream, like the 24-hour stream they're just playing like everything in continuous order. And they had that on, and it was like right at the beginning, I'm like, maybe I just give it a chance again. I haven't seen it in a long time. I got like halfway through and I'm like, no, I was right. This is terrible.
And see, I kind of, it was a cleanup job. I kind of liked Rise of Skywalker way more than I liked Last Jedi. And it's not because, I mean, I get what you're saying with that, Dan, is it's all, but the thing about the whole Palpatine return is they did that in the expanded universe. There was this whole thing about the Palpatine was trying to clone himself, trying to be the eternal. So, but like you guys have said, there's no continuity between any of the three movies. And there was no explaining, okay, well, it would have been different had in Last Jedi, they killed Snoke, and then all of a sudden you see Snoke walk through the door again.
Right.
That would have explained a little bit of it because, okay, this is a clone, but who's he a clone of? And then that could have been explained a little bit in Rise of Skywalker. Okay, you see Kylo walking through the vats of clones, and you can see the progression of, well, that looks like Snoke. Well, that looks more like this, or that looks more like that. And that would have been able to set up the progression a little bit better. My problem with, and I agree with all of what you guys said. This is pretty much the worst part of Star Wars, is them trying to force the ending of the Skywalker saga. And that's basically what it was. It was a forced way of doing things. They were like, okay, well, these guys are getting too old to be playing this stuff. We want to have our own versions of these guys going forward to make our own movies. We're going to end it. And they did it in the most obvious way they were going to do it, just by killing them all off. Because then they knew fans were going to be like, well, we can't beg for them to bring them back. Because, we visibly saw them die. There's no way you can bring them back. The old Marvel thing that if there's no body, there's no death, or even Star Wars, no body, no death. I mean, they brought Darth Maul back like 100 different times and different things. So,
are they doing series on Darth Maul now?
Yes,
I think so, yeah.
And the original voice for him, from the cartoon, Sam Witwer, is going to be coming back and doing one. I don't know what the premise is of it, but it should be pretty good. But yeah, and I just was thinking about this. They were trying to recreate the original 3 from the OG trilogy. If you think about it, Rey, Luke, Poe, Han. Finn is the hard one to throw out there. You know, is he more of a Lando? Is he more of a this? Is he more of a that? But your 2 basic ones, Rey is your Luke, and Poe is your Han. My biggest problem with all these movies is all the cheesy ass humor that they tried to force in there.
Yeah.
You had your humor in the original movies, but it was a subtle humor. It wasn't like this out there forced in trying to make a joke where, you know, in Force Awakens between Poe and Kylo, it's, well, am I supposed to talk first or are you supposed to talk first? How are we supposed to do this? Okay, what? And then the second one, before the whole Mary Poppins thing, it was the Poe doing the prank phone call to the other ship just to buy time.
Right.
I swear, I was in the theater for all 3 of them. And for The Last Jedi, I think the people around me thought I was having a religious movement. Because every other minute it was like, Jesus fucking Christ, what the hell is going on? And
man.
I don't ever talk at movies. That's why I hate going to theaters, is because I don't want people talking while I'm trying to watch a movie.
Yeah.
And just with all 3 of them, it was the same thing. What the fuck is going on? What the hell is this shit on the screen? You're
Well,
meaning I'm paid all this money for this?
it makes me feel awkward talking about it. Ugh.
All right,
Star
so we'll
Wars should
change
not have
subject.
this experience.
Can I say runner up? If you were saying disappointing, one of the worst Star Wars things I've ever seen, and I can't call it disappointing because I don't know if I had high expectations for it. The Acolyte was one of the worst. I don't know how you guys. I know that's a bit of a hot button issue in the community about, you know, it. I just was so not into that, and I thought it was a real misfire. And I know, you know, the complexion of this phone call might make us look like we have certain opinions about that show, but I thought from just a like a pure story standpoint, I was just like, this sucks. Like I'm not invested in this at all. Like and I'm like, none of it really tracks, none of it makes sense. I'm like and so like I couldn't call it a disappointment because I wasn't like super like jazzed about it, you know, but like in terms of like things I really didn't enjoy, Acolyte is like one I will just never imagine going back to revisit.
You know, I think a big part of that, and I agree with you, is just boring and a misfire. But for me, a big reason of that is I've lost all respect for the Jedi. And so, like, when your heroes are like all Jedi, it's like they're just a bunch. They're this authoritarian cult, and most of it, the plot has to do with, you know, one of the Jedi disobeying or like trying to weasel out of the cult like, you know, tendencies of the Jedi. And it's like that's just boring to me. I don't invest anything into the characters because I'm like, you probably deserve to get taken down, you know. And I was right. In the end, the dude let one of them fall into the fire. Like it was
Right.
like,
I think my biggest, and I didn't really have that bad of opinion of Acolyte. I mean, obviously it wasn't like my favorite thing in the world,
right.
but I think my biggest problem is they made you feel invested in this character only to within like 2 seconds of them dying. And it was like, well, then why do I want to invest myself into another character if the next thing I know you're just going to kill them? I mean,
Thought it was
I got to
interesting.
give them.
They really leaned on Carrie Ann Moss, and she was in it for like all of 15 minutes.
Right.
Right. And they built up that and I don't remember the name because it's been so long since I watched it, but the one Padawan, the like pasty greenish Padawan,
Yeah,
they kept leaning into her too, like, okay, you're gonna be following her because she's having, and then next thing you know she's dead. And it's like,
yeah,
what? So why am I getting invested in these characters? But on the other hand, I thought the fight sequences were some of the most
Yeah.
amazing things I've seen. Some of the character building, even though the finish of the characters weren't great, the building of the characters I thought were pretty solid. I think the biggest problem with the Acolyte was they planned on having more than one series. They planned on having multiple seasons to this show, so they were setting things up for the
yeah,
next season, only for it to be pulled out from underneath them. Obviously, they were bringing Plagueis in. Obviously, they were
yeah.
bringing Yoda in. Obviously, they were doing all this stuff, but they never got to finish it.
Which I would love to see. Like I found the villain really compelling. I enjoyed him. He was cool, and I would love to see Pelagius and all that develop. But man, they just really blew it on the storyline, on the main story. And I have an unpopular opinion probably, but I really did not enjoy Skeleton Crew.
I haven't
Really?
watched it yet.
Yeah. Yep, didn't enjoy it a bit. I
Wow.
watched
Okay.
all of it because it's Star Wars and I make myself even if I don't like it. But, yeah, it came out the only part I liked of the whole show is where that kid tries to light the lights ignite the lightsaber.
I have not been able to get to it yet. I have like a long list of things that I need to watch, and I keep putting them off because every time I go to sit down to watch it, something happens. So usually I watch something while I invest my gaming time. Well, I haven't had much of my gaming time lately because of things at work where I'm working longer hours or more days and stuff. So I haven't been able to watch a lot of things. But
Yeah.
my unpopular opinion, and it might not be so unpopular, is I hated the idea of Solo. Now, it ended up being an all right movie, but I thought it would be better as a separate entity instead of trying to be the backstory of a main character, if that kind of makes sense. If it had not been that it was the Han Solo backstory, I think it could have been a lot better, but I think they were trying to force too much into the background of Han Solo. And obviously, we're all used to Harrison Ford being Han Solo, that it felt really weird trying to get into this other guy being Han Solo. So even though the movie was decent, I still had a hard time with it because I was like, man, I don't know if I can get into having somebody else be Han Solo after years of Harrison Ford. So that's my kind of back thing, but I want to do a hypothetical here. Well, I'll be doing a lot of hypothetical because we're talking about a hypothetical friggin' universe. But if you could go back, let's say you had the power, you had somebody's ear in the whole situation. You know everything that went down afterwards. If you could, would you go back and talk George Lucas out of selling to Disney? Or would you still let that process go through? I know it's a hard question because I thought of it and I was like, man, I don't know what my answer would be. Because obviously, if he didn't sell to Disney, do we still get Mandalorian? Do we still get, like Dan, your guys' Andor? Do we still get all this other stuff on top of the crap that we got? Do we get something else or do we never get anything ever again? So whoever wants to take it first, because I know you're both deep in thought right now.
I don't think Lucas is not, prolific. Like, there's a good chance we would have gotten nothing else, after the prequels, but, you know, it just goes back to, like, what you wanna keep, there's a lot of stuff that Disney has done that I would hate to get rid of. Solo is a guilty pleasure of mine when I wanna watch it's like a favorite because it's like when I want to watch something Star Wars-ish, but don't want to engage or pay close attention, I can run that, and it's just like Star Wars in the background. And I acknowledge everything you say about Solo is true, but it's a guilty pleasure that I can press play anytime. I've probably watched it more than any other Disney thing, just because it's
Oh,
so
don't get
easy
me
to.
wrong. I've watched it, and whenever it's been on
Yeah.
TV, I'll just pop it on or whatever to have a background. But it didn't live up to my. I was disappointed in it just because
Um,
I thought that had it not been Han Solo, it could have been a better movie.
Not a diehard fan of it, but I did enjoy Ahsoka. I loved Kenobi. I really loved
Yeah.
Kenobi. So yeah, I would hate to jettison those things, but like if I did have that power, I would go back and just stop George from making the prequels too, and just have that isolated, tiny like I'm an ultra fundamentalist, like ultra orthodox Star Wars fan.
This is the way.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting for me because like like I said, I grew up like liking Star Wars, like the idea of Star Wars, but never like really investing fully in Star Wars until I kind of became like almost an adult, and so I kind of like was a late bloomer coming into it. And so I I personally really love this current environment that we're in with Disney because, I'm getting to experience all of these things, live. I'm, like everything that was going on with Andor, everything that first season of Mandalorian. I'm not sure, like, there's, a time period that we're gonna like kind of recapture with Star Wars, like in that, like that was kind of a unique Star Wars moment where like
yeah,
that was the first like Disney Star Wars like TV show, and it just kicked so much ass in the first season, and everyone was connected, like, and it was like, oh, like this can work. Disney can make a Star Wars thing that's not just a crappy 2.5 hour movie, with
yeah,
lightsabers, And I'll say this too. I'm curious what James has to think about this too. Is like I've got a son that's 3.5. He's literally right downstairs right now watching Tales of the Jedi,
yeah,
the Disney plus, the Disney show about Jedi, and he runs around, like we go to the park, and he's like, "Come on, Dad! Like we're Jedi. Like we're gonna find like bad guys. Like we gotta find pirates, and like this is my lightsaber." And it's like, we get a lot of crap. There's gonna be a lot of Book of Boba Fett's that come out with it,
yeah.
you know.
Lord,
But there's now a lot more entryways for more fans to jump into this universe,
yeah,
and specifically for my son, there are earlier entryways for him to jump into the Star Wars universe, where now we have to make the differentiator when he asks to watch Jedi. Is it Howie Jedi or Daddy Jedi? Because it's like, do you want to watch like my Jedi or your Jedi? Because he'll sit and watch like the first half of Phantom Menace because it's got so many bright lights and it's got a lot of colors on it and stuff. And it's like there's just so much more. There's, because of the content net out there, it's a wider berth for more fans to find entryways in there. And some of it might be bad, but I think it's got to be a net positive for more fans to jump into this universe with us.
yeah. My son's 3, and he hasn't hit the Star Wars phase yet. He's still stuck on Spider-Man. But my oldest is 12, and when she was about 6 or 7, her first exposure to Star Wars was the Rebels cartoon. She just started watching it one day, and she got into it, and she would watch it. She, just dedicated. And then one morning I wake up and she's having like a panic attack. She's like breaking down in tears. I'm like, "What's wrong?" She said, "Kanan just died," and like, she's going through the whole drama of it. And she hasn't seen the original trilogy or the prequels or any. This is her first Star Wars experience. And I'm like, it's so cool. Like you said, all these points of entry for folks to get into Star Wars now. Rebels was her original Star Wars thing. And that's
That's
so
cool.
cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah, she was tore up.
Oh man, I can only imagine.
See, now I will say that for Rise of Skywalker, I admit this. I'm a man. I know we're not supposed to shed tears and stuff like that, but I was having a rough time of it. Seeing how they sent Carrie Fisher out hit me, but I was also going through a ton of emotions because the week before I lost my grandfather. So I
Yeah.
was already going through a ton of emotions, and then all of a sudden seeing the way they sent Carrie Fisher out, I was just like, oh my god, I can't do this.
You were fine until you saw Chewie react.
Pretty much. And then him
Yeah.
actually getting his medal, and I was just like, oh my god, I can't do this anymore. And but I struggled with this question a lot because a lot of like what you guys said, we would, would we have something like The Mandalorian? Would we have this? Would we? My only hope would be is it would open his eyes to say, all right, Dave, Dave Filoni, you've been my right hand man for eons now. It's your turn to take this thing and run with it.
Yeah.
And that would be my only hope is if he didn't sell to Disney, he would just turn everything over to Filoni, take a step back, be he could be executive producer for everything, have his name still slapped on it and just let Filoni take over. And with that, I would hope we would still be able to get some of the things. Maybe it wouldn't be the Mandalorian we see now, but it would be something similar. Maybe it wouldn't be the Rebels we saw at that time. It would be something similar, but who knows? But that would be my only hope. I wouldn't go back and erase the prequels. I really wouldn't. Even though they weren't the greatest in the world, I still liked Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith was perfection. It cinched everything up so perfectly. It made the only thing that with Revenge of the Sith that kind of ruined the OG trilogy was the whole when Luke is asking Leia about her mother and what do you remember about your mother? Well, how do you remember that when you're just fresh out of the womb? And that kind of ruined that. But you know, I wish he would have changed a little bit on it. Obviously there's a lot of things with the prequels that could have been changed, but I wouldn't go that far back to stop anything. But I would like to see the universe if a Dave Filoni took over instead of a Disney taking over. But
Help us, Obi-Wan Filoni.
and I mean, you look at it now, and he's pretty much running a lot of the stuff as is, and everything him and Favreau have done. I mean, I know
Yeah.
Ahsoka wasn't the greatest in the world, but it was still better than some of the other stuff that we've got.
I
And
liked it. I
and
thought it was cool to see, Ezra too. That was really cool.
right. And I do have to say this. I wish they would have picked somebody else other than Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka. And it's not that she's a bad Ahsoka. It's just I've seen her in too many things that it's like
It
it's
takes
hard
you
for
out
me
of
to
it.
yeah, it's hard for me to envision. I mean, like one of my favorite movies in the world is Clerks 2. And she's
Yeah.
one of the stars of Clerks 2. It's like, huh?
No, there are some
So
really good things in Ahsoka, and, like I said, I'm not a super fan of it, but I like it. I don't have any complaints.
well, and that's like a lot of people are down on Book of Boba Fett, and it's like, well, I didn't mind it. It may not be
I
the
didn't mind it.
greatest thing in the world for me, but obviously the last few episodes were rough because it was just basically should have been the Mandalorian
Well,
season
Season
3.5 or
right.
whatever.
that's the thing, like, to me, it just had no point. It was a story that wasn't worth telling. It was like Boba Fett shows up and gets a job running Jabba's old place, and it's like, boom, end of story. But then, like, the only parts I liked were when the Mandalorian showed up and
Right.
it became the Mandalorian, like
Well, I did like the fact in Book of Boba Fett that it showed him escaping the Sarlacc. It showed him how he survived and all that stuff. The other side point of it of him becoming the new boss and all that, yeah, that was kind of out there, but he had to have a purpose, I guess. And
the scooter
and
bike chase. We gonna talk about that?
and that was
I don't
weird.
think
It
no,
was.
never again.
Although swoop bikes is another thing from the EU, they just really kind of went nuts with them and the design of them. So
Yeah.
let's
There's a
do,
big American graffiti feel to the,
yeah,
the scooter
yeah.
bikes.
So I want to, if you were to fall into the Star Wars universe today, what would your preferred, I don't want to say profession because a lot of the things weren't really professions, but what would you want to be in the Star Wars universe? Would you want to be a Jedi? Would you want to be a Sith? Would you want to be a politician, a spice runner? What would you want to be in the Star Wars universe? I know I came up with some deep questions on this one, so I had a short amount of time with you guys. I had to come up with something good for this.
Okay, I got exactly. I know exactly what I've got. This is such a specific moment.
You're gonna be Dex, aren't you?
But the in the first that chase scene in Attack of the Clones where they're trying to chase down the assassin
Yep.
and they go into like the sports, like basically a intergalactic sports bar. I want to run that. I want to live on Coruscant because like this isn't like any business or anything like that in Star Wars is not like you're not like some manager at BW3s where you're like running front of house, back of house bullshit. Like if you have a bar or cantina or something like that on Coruscant, you're basically like you're basically like one step below a politician. You're probably like a pseudo mob boss, and like I'm probably running like an illegal gambling scheme out of the back of that. I'm running death sticks out of the front, and like that's what I want to do. I want to live on Coruscant. I want to live like just below the level, like just below the level of legality and some kind of business, and live my life there. That's what I want to do.
I didn't think about that one, but yeah, that would be pretty solid. James, what about you? What would you want to be in the Star? I was really shocked that you didn't say you wanted something to do with force powers because that's the obvious answer for most people. But James, what about you?
I want to be a Jedi, and I would be a Jedi reformer. I would because Jedi's are the biggest hypocrites of all time.
Yeah.
So I would reform the order and try to get them to withdraw from politics and political activities, which is an attachment to changing things. And I would try to be as much like Yoda in a hut on Dagobah as possible.
Yeah, and I really struggled with this one too because it's like I want to be a Jedi because I've always, I said when I was a kid there's three things I wanted to be. I either wanted to be a Ghostbuster, I either wanted to be a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, or I wanted to be a Jedi. And obviously, I'm not a turtle, so that didn't happen. And I do like paranormal stuff, but I didn't become a buster. But uh, I struggle with that as an adult because it's like I would use the Force as to do bad things. I'd be walking in the bank. You will hand me your money. You will take your top off. The whole fanboys thing. You will take your top off. So,
I just
but
wish
then
there was like a level of like because all dark side users they always the trajectory is always like Palpatine level evil and decay, and it's like what if you could just stop at a certain level of like things like that and just not go full killing
Right.
well,
youngling evil, just
Like
like
basically like I know he wasn't actually like a force user, but like Kumail Nanjiani's character in Kenobi where like he's like
oh yeah,
pretending to
yeah.
be a Jedi, like if I like that's okay. Like if you could like basically use your like force powers to just kind of like trick people and be like kind of a bit of an asshole. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
yeah, and but and but like Yoda said, once down the dark path, always will you follow. So I mean, it's hard to once you break that wall, it's hard to get back through it.
You
But
get those
that's
cool
why,
Sith eyeballs though.
Yeah. Now, speaking of Sith, and I'll mine is obviously going to be some kind of Force user. I probably wouldn't be a Jedi or a Sith. I would probably be the one that knows how to use the Force, but didn't follow, kind of like I am now, where I believe in a certain thing, but I don't follow any specific religion. So that would probably be me in the Star Wars universe, where I can use the Force, but I don't follow any specific uh 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 school of thought on it. But what do you think of the change on how Sith get their lightsaber crystals? Before, in like the old expanded universe, it was like a synthetic crystal that had to be created. Now it's you bleed a crystal. And and I know that's a big argument with people because, well, with all the killing that Anakin did, why didn't his turn red then? Well, bleeding a crystal is a Disney concept. It wasn't an original Lucas concept. So, what do you guys think on that whole thing there?
James, I'll
Dan?
let you. I guess I hadn't really thought about it. I guess I like the idea of anything with the Force going to the dark side of the Force. I like that anything connected to that being emotionally driven, because that's the whole, the whole idea. Fear leads to hate, hate leads to anger, or what is it? Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering, or whatever it goes. So like that, it's an emotional path that you go on that leads you on the dark side. It's usually not like I'm gonna go on the dark side to make a shit ton of money or something like that. It's an emotional connection to go down. And so I like any idea that keeps the Force connected to emotions.
Okay, I can
Yeah,
see
I
that.
like it. I like it. I think it's a cool idea, and it's kind of neat to think about too if you're converting to the dark side, if you're a Jedi or what have you, and you're making that slow progression. Imagine that moment where like you're previously green or blue, and my kids are yelling in the background. I don't know if you can hear them, but where your previously green or blue lightsaber just turns red, and you know you've crossed that line, and you are
Yeah,
like you're there now. You're not faking it. Like this is it. Like I kind of dig that, and yeah, another example of how some cool things come out of Disney having it.
yeah. And see, I'm kind of indifferent on it. I kind of understand the reason of the synthetic because you had to build it through the dark side of the Force, and you had to use that to only dark side users could create a synthetic crystal. So
Mm.
I kind of appreciate that a little bit more, and that would help explain the whole Anakin situation. Okay, well, he didn't get his red crystal until he, delved deep into the dark side and was able to create it. But I'm kind of indifferent. I can understand it on the other side that you've delved so far into it, you've done enough killing that your lightsaber that's attuned to you, becomes that. So we're almost to the hour mark. I'm going to ask one more question, then I'll let you guys go or give, tell where everybody can find you and all that good stuff. Who is your favorite character out of all the media that is Star Wars? I'm going to give mine first so that way you guys can think on yours a little bit more. There is a video game series called Knights of the Old Republic. I fell in love with that game when I was in college. I don't know how many classes I missed playing that game on top of watching Revenge of the Sith. But Darth Revan, well, Revan, I'll call him Revan, has been my favorite character out of everything because he was one of those that was able to fall to the dark side and be redeemed. So we actually got to see the Anakin situation full force, where he fell
What
to
a
the dark
horrible
side.
fate for him, though.
Yeah, I didn't like the book. The book really
Oh,
sucked in my eyes, but
yeah.
I, I that was one of the things that I was glad they got rid of out of the expanded universe because now I don't have to. But then again, the whole video game series is out of it. But favorite storyline and all that stuff. That whole storyline arc has been great. I wish Filoni and I know Revan is canon now because he was mentioned in a couple of the cartoons.
Oh, cool.
So I do hope that that Filoni will touch on something with that. When they were talking about how they were going to do a story arc prior to the whole Skywalker thing, I had hoped it was going to be an Old Republic type deal, but didn't end up
Yeah.
happening. But that's my guy, Revan. I love him even above the Skywalkers, man. It would be Revan and then probably Luke, Anakin, and down. But so that gives you guys enough time to think. Who wants to go first and tell me who their favorite out of all the Star Wars media is?
Well, I I'm tied, but I think I would pick Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's my favorite. I've enjoyed everything about every appearance of his, but it's a close tie with, this is such a traditional answer, but it's a close tie with Luke. I've enjoyed Luke's, like I said, even in Last Jedi, I didn't mind his story arc. I thought it was pretty cool. If you get past the point, like, would he do that? Would he just withdraw from his friends and stuff? And I think that's debatable. I definitely would not have chosen to write his arc like that, but as it is, it made sense if you accept that premise, and I just like his whole story.
Yeah, like I said, the Skywalkers are up there for me, and even Obi-Wan, because Ewan McGregor was a great Obi-Wan. I mean, I think I liked him as an
Oh,
Obi-Wan
man.
better than even Alec Guinness.
Right?
So,
Yeah.
all right, Dan, it's your moment.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say I had kind of a two-part answer to this. Like in terms of like character development and like the character in the universe, it's hard to beat Obi-Wan because he was played so well by Ewan McGregor in the prequels. Like he was probably the best character in all of the prequel movies. Outside
You
of
didn't like
out,
Jar Jar?
outside of Palpatine and Sidious, like he plays it so well. The progression of where we meet Obi-Wan to where we see him in the Kenobi series to where we see him in the original trilogy, it just flows seamlessly. And there's not a character, I don't think there's a character in the whole Star Wars universe that I think has made that kind of transition between that many eras, like time, like not just like timeline eras, but like physical timeline eras, like 70s, 80s
Yeah.
to 90s to 2000s. Like that character has transitioned and aged so well that it's really hard not to say Obi-Wan. And so I have to agree with James there. But the other one I was going to say, and I'm going to bring this full circle, Diego Luna played Andor so well. Like
Oh, yeah.
it was
Yeah.
he I just don't know how to say, like, Diego Luna played
Short circuiting
connected.
your brain, it was so good.
He was like, it was just like, again, it was like, it was a tricky situation with Andor because the whole first season of Andor takes place across like maybe a couple of weeks,
Yeah.
like at most a couple of weeks, like, and then the second season of Andor is basically like 5 years condensed into the 3 episode chunks. And to show that character progression and to show that as well as he did, and to like take the character that he played one time in a movie, which he did really well. Like in Rogue One, he did that so well. And you did that 10 years ago. And then now to bring that back into a show where you're playing the same character, but it was a character you played physically 10 years ago. And also it's 10 years ago, like, or it's like 5 years ago in his life. And you have to like do all that emotional baggage, like to build up to the character he was 10 years ago when you played him last time. Like, I think he just did it super well. And I was just really moved by the second season of everything that he went through. And you're kind of like, he's that vision, he's that window for the audience to see the atrocities of the Empire and what stokes rebellion outside of people that are connected to the Force. And it's just very powerful to see him emotionally connect to those. And you're that audience, and he's connecting you to it. He's gripping you by the hand and pulling you into it. And so in terms of like character that I watch play in a Star Wars thing, it's hard to beat Diego Luna and what he did in Andor.
Well, fellas, we're a little over an hour, so I'm going to let you guys plug what you got going on. James, you got the Billy the Kid Coalition and all that stuff. You do your once a month, so why don't you tell everybody where they can find you at?
Yeah, so I spend most of my time talking about the real world Han Solo, which is Billy the Kid. I do a podcast called Chasing Billy. We do some episodes pre-recorded, but we also do a monthly live show, sometimes more when we feel like it. But that's on YouTube. If you just go search Chasing Billy, we'll pop up, and subscribe and check us out. And also pretty vibrant Facebook community with Billy the Kid's Historical Coalition. We work to preserve and promote all of that history associated with Billy the Kid. We mark graves that haven't been marked since that time, and discover new history, and just make sure the known history is preserved. And I'm on the board of directors for that nonprofit. And their website's btkcoalition.com. And look us up on Facebook. No, it's not the BTK killer. It took me a long time to get over that. But that's how they refer to him. And I just had to accept it. I couldn't change it. But look us up on Facebook, Billy the Kid's Historical Coalition. Join our group, and we have a good time in there too.
And I've caught a lot of them, and that's how I connected with James. And it's a good. I love their show and what they're doing over there. And like I was talking to him before we started recording, I just finished one of the books that they released, and I got another one to go. So, Dan, I know you do all kinds of things, and I can never keep track of everything. So why don't you tell everybody where they can find you at?
Well, taking it pretty easy right now, especially with the newborn hanging around. Right now, it's mostly just Mondays on the Pack a Day podcast. You can catch me with Monty Moore and Camille Davis. We release episodes every Monday for the Pack a Day podcast. If you're not familiar, Green Bay Packers podcast, we release an episode every single day. Monty, Camille, and myself release our Monday episodes. So we're getting, obviously very close to the start of the NFL season, and training camp is coming up soon. So obviously that means we're going to be talking about some stupid stuff coming up to fill time before training camp. So if you're a Packer fan or NFL fan or anything like that, give us a listen. We have a lot of fun over there.
And Dan's great. I've known him since the Lombardi Bars days, so they are pretty knowledgeable with what their stuff is. Well, most of them are knowledgeable. I mean, they still hire Jimmy.
Yeah, we keep Jimmy around for tax purposes.
But yeah, pretty much. You gotta. Well, that's the whole ADA compliance deal.
Right.
So.
Exactly.
But guys, that was a great episode. I loved it. I love talking Star Wars. You can find our show anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. Ohana Packers Edition podcast, Facebook, Instagram, Elon Machine, Blue Sky, all that good stuff. If you like Star Wars, if you like the Packers, go over to our website, ohanapackers.org/store, and you can get your own Packers-related Star Wars merchandise. I did work hard on some of these designs. We've got the one that I'm wearing. Obviously, the people aren't going to be able to see it because this isn't a video podcast. But I've got May the OPE be with you. We've got Join the OPE side. We have Cheese Curds and Jordan Love. And then we have Cheese is the Way. So shirts, mugs, stickers, magnets. Go over there, get you something, help support the show. As always, we finish out with saying, go Pack, go, and aloha.
Green Bay hustle, grind it up, hit the field. field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for all happy up. Let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for you know who wanna go.